Hey guys, how you going? Hope you're all doing very well. This evening I'm going to be doing a review of an American horror film, English language, released in the year 2013, directed by James DeMonaco, and this movie is called Purge. Now in The Purge, it's set in the United States in the not too distant future. Now the unemployment level is at 1% and there is pretty much no crime. And this is all down to a government initiative called The Purge. Now the Purge is for 12 hours for 1 day a year. It's lawlessness. Basically, criminals can commit crime without the repercussions of the law. The only rule is that they can't attack government officials. So this is the reason why America is a much better place, because for those 12 hours, people can release their aggression instead of bottling it up. So the movie centers upon this family. Now, the family father, played by Ethan Hawke, he is a salesman and he sells these high-tech security systems. So he's made it pretty big for himself, and therefore he's living very comfortably. So each year they bunker down in this security system, which makes them safe. But this year is going to be a hell of a lot different, because this homeless man comes running through the street. He's covered in blood and he's begging for refuge. So the family reluctantly take him in. And this is where things go from bad to worse, because this homeless guy has been chased by a gang of very strange psychotic individuals who want this guy. Basically, they say that it's their right to purge on this homeless man because he's scum. So they knock on the door of this family's house. They say, release this homeless man and we won't hurt you. But if you fail to release him, we're going to come in there and kill you all. So the family end up arguing amongst each other. To start with, they want to throw him out, but then they end up leaving him in there because they don't want to basically send him out to the dogs. So this really angers the group, and therefore the group are going to get inside the house and they're basically going to punish them all. So whether or not the group can do this, that's something you're going to have to find out for yourself, because that's as far as I'm going with my synopsis. Now, my thoughts on the film. You guys might be wondering why I am reviewing another mainstream Hollywood horror film. Now, I have made it known in the past that I'm very disappointed with mainstream horror in the Hollywood sort of world. But I don't hate it. Now, the reason why I don't hate it is because I love horror in general. So I'm always looking for that film to really surprise me and give me, renewed hope. The Evil Dead remake did that to some extent. I really enjoyed that film, and I was hoping that The Purge would be no different. Unfortunately, it is different. It is much different from The Evil Dead, and it's not a movie that's going to revive any sort of good feeling in any horror fan out there. A lot of people like the movie, and I can appreciate the fact that you've got a right to your own opinion, but for me, The Purge failed on all levels. Now, number one, the movie reeked of convenience. Now, the story was absolutely ridiculous. The idea that 12 hours once a year is going to release all the bad sort of quality out of a criminal was just exaggerated to the point where it was totally unrealistic. Therefore, I felt that it was basically there to answer the questions of, a typical horror movie goer. Why didn't you call the police? Why didn't you do that? Why didn't you do this? So it was more a case of being concerned about those questions than it was to make an authentic sort of storyline. So because it was so exaggerated, because the idea of, criminals are going to become better people, because for 12 hours they're allowed to do whatever they want without repercussions. I think that as a criminal, if you are a criminal, you're going to commit crime no matter what. And just because you're not going to be punished for 12 hours for 1 day, it's not going to change anything. So it was a ridiculous story, and as I said, it took me completely out of it. And that's not the biggest problem of the movie, but it is a problem that I thought was there for a different purpose, and the purpose for me was there for convenience. So that was the first issue I had with it. But usually with these sorts of movies, you can push that issue aside and just enjoy it for what it is. But unfortunately, I couldn't even do that. Now, number two, I thought it was very in your face. Nothing was left up to the imagination. At the start of the movie, they were explaining the Purge, but the Purge didn't need explaining because it was simple enough. So it's insulting the intelligence of the viewer. And this is a problem that you get in a lot of these sorts of movies. The director doesn't have confidence in the intelligence of the viewer. Therefore, it's insulting the intelligence, whether it's deliberate or not. Obviously, it's not deliberately insulting the viewer, but having to explain everything. Just leave it up to the viewer's mind. Leave it up to the viewer and have confidence in the viewer that they're going to work it out themselves. And it just felt like an insult to my intelligence just to see these guys explaining it. On more than one occasion, they were explaining it. And I just hated that. So that was the second problem of the movie. Third problem of the movie is not the acting. The acting was pretty good. And as a production piece. I thought it was very well done. Cinematography was excellent. Thought the horror aspect of it was really well done, and there was a strong sense of anticipation. But that anticipation wasn't matched by the characters. The characters were very shallow, therefore I couldn't really gain a connection with them. I didn't care what happened to them. So that's always a problem where the bad things start happening, you have to connect with someone, therefore you're going to get a lot of fear. And you're going to fear for them. But when you don't care about them, when the bad things start happening, it's just not that bad because you don't care if they die and you're just going through the motions. So the fact that the characters weren't really well drawn out, that was another criticism I had of the movie. Although the acting was fairly decent, they weren't unlikable, but then again, they weren't likable enough for you to really care about them. Now, the anticipation was there. You know, the build-up for a very, thrilling climax was always evident and always a threat, but it never delivers upon that. Now, the villains looked really good to start with. They look completely nuts. But when it comes down to it, it just fizzes out. The villains were easily dispatched. I'm not going to tell you what happens at the end, but there's kind of a little twist that I saw coming. It wasn't terrible. Then again, it wasn't great. It didn't really save the film. But everything seems to go through the motions. It doesn't seem to have a lot of passion in it, and it didn't seem to have a lot of hard-hitting impact at the end. And it promises that. You kind of feel to yourself, what is this family capable of as far as self-defense is concerned? What are these villains capable of when it comes to basically unleashing this punishment? And it does kind of give you the message that without law, that can bring the bad in us, and it can also bring out the good in us. And to some extent, that story, in parts, it was evident, but in other parts, it felt like the movie didn't know how to portray this message. It didn't know how to become a horror film. It threatens to be a horror film, but at the end, it just meanders along, and it patters out to what was a very, very unrewarding and very forgettable experience. So, it was really, really disappointing. I'm not sharing the love for it. If you like the movie and you want to tell me what you liked about it, if you don't agree with me, that's fine. But for me, it really didn't work, and it was just another movie to add to the very forgettable experiences that is coming out of Hollywood lately. So overall, I'm only going to give it 2 stars. Very disappointed, and it's not coming recommended. Alright guys, that's my review. Hope you enjoyed it. Till next time, keep watching movies, and I'll see you later.